Because of his unique upbringing, he chose to be a knockoff rather than an original. Antifa, to me, is the modern day KKK. Watch the inauguration speech. President Trump is speaking directly to you. Told me not to twist your words or read too much into what you said, but being around young players energized you. That's not a statement about maybe you'd like to see some young players on your team?
Wow. You know what? That's a Bikram yoga stretch. You stretched the hell out of it. Good job. Good job. I'm not even going to answer that. That's just silly. Next.
Embarrassing himself, par for the course with Jason Whitlock.
And he took a picture of the screen with his phone. He said, I'm looking at standings on ESPN.com. This is the ad running above the standings. How is this possible? Appropriate? The ad in question was a card that said, balls deep inside of me is a great way to spend your birthday. A nice, fun little birthday card. As many people have pointed out, those ads are based on your search history. They're cookies, something that Jason Whitlock is intimately familiar with.
Wasn't there more on the description of like what? It was like great gifts for your boyfriend or your partner.
It's a one-pack, funny, happy birthday, him, husband, boyfriend, birthday gifts, decorations. That's what the rest of it is cut off, and it's got the Shop Now button right on there. So the internet has very politely answered his question about how it's possible, but Jason Whitlock has yet to tweet about any sort of reaction to the advice he's been getting.
Ooh, okay.
Just remember, clear that browsing history, Jason.
Yeah, I love when that happens. That's an old school thing.
He showed us his pornographic history while being a family values conservative.
I don't want... Racism is an issue in America, but it is primarily an issue for the poor. It's not LeBron James's issue.
He also believes affluent black people do not suffer from racism. He has gone after ESPN's Stephen A. Smith before.
But then Stephen A. pivoted it to talking about me. I'm up here and he's down here. And then the real shot he's taking is, and Jason, or fat bastard, me, he's built his entire career on maligning and smearing black people.
With Smith responding.
Now, there's a lot of people out there that want me to address other names. There's one particular person who will remain nameless, and I will not deny it. I think he's a fat, no-good bastard who I despise to the core, even though he has made a career out of maligning and ridiculing and trying to wish others the worst.
He also wanted to clarify he was not going after his former co-host, nor Whitlock's former co-host as well.
They ain't fat bastards who are seeds of the devil, wishing nothing but black folks harm. But I'll leave that for another day, for when the time is right.
The latest debacle is this.
One other thing, there are people out there lying and actually putting out there that I didn't write my book. I can assure you, so help me God, I wrote my book. It's my memoir. It's my life story. I wasn't leaving that in the hands of other people.
Would you ignore people?
Co-host Molly Kiram tries telling Smith to not pay it any mind. It's because Jason Whitlock does not believe Smith wrote parts or any of his memoir. And in typical Whitlock fashion, he affiliates, aligns, and champions himself with what's being talked about currently, that being Cat Williams. And I know this because we called him out for it previously when he claimed that the attacks laid at him was akin to being targeted by Hamas. That's what he said. So he says he read the book Straight Shooter, and he claims that Smith's story is falsified.
They're lying.
And I know exactly who you're talking about. But why does it bother him? You're not going to buy the book. You're not going to read the book. So why do you care? You spend so much time. People spend so much time worrying about other people and what they're doing in their lives. If you realize how little people actually cared about you, you start worrying about them.
Whitlock would write in his article for The Blaze, founded by Glenn Beck, a total and complete bigot. He, or his ghostwriter, claims he received a full basketball scholarship from Winston-Salem State after a one-day tryout in February '88. A former player allegedly drove Stephen A. from New York to North Carolina for the tryout, and Smith impressed the former player during a one-on-one. According to the book, Smith arrived on campus, checked into a hotel, and woke up the next day to participate in a scrimmage. Whitlock then says that Smith, who played only 1 year of high school ball, enrolled at FIT, or the Fashion Institute of Technology College in New York, so he could play JUCO, and then per Whitlock rode the bench again on top of a schedule that seemed impossible between school, work, and practice. Then, on Beck's outlet, Whitlock would pen, "So, after riding the bench in high school for a year, riding the bench at JUCO, impressing an old player on a playground, Smith earned a tryout in front of legendary coach Clarence Big House Gaines. And this tryout happened on a Sunday at the end of the regular season. Smith would then, as he tells it in his memoir, Straight Shooter, hit 17 straight shots. And Big House Gaines was like, yep, gotta sign it. Gotta do it." Whitlock doesn't buy it. He doesn't buy any part of it. He then points to only seeing one photo of Smith, the headshot that we have seen circulated on Twitter. They've showed it on ESPN many times over as well. He also lambasted Smith for his 1.5 points per game, where it appears Stephen A. may or may not have misspoken on how many times he suited up because of injury. There were things he said in years past that are somewhat contradictory to what he said presently, which is, look, he could have misspoke. To get an exact quote from him and some evidence would certainly help his cause here. For one reason or another, Whitlock then thinks it's all a hoax because Smith's teammates were short. Mind you, this is D2 basketball decades ago. Seemingly comping it to big-time collegiate and NBA players is bullish. And because Whitlock couldn't resist, as he is so far down the conspiratorial rabbit hole, he admonishes Stephen A. and paints the picture of Marlon Mama Roseborough, a role model and professor to Smith, as a potential BS storyline. In his own words from the schmuck himself, Smith's memoir raises far more questions than answers about how he became the top personality in sports media. You read it, and Smith feels like a gimmick, a plant. You read it, and you realize Claudine Gay makes perfect sense. There's another example. You read it, and you think Cat Williams is telling the truth about the entertainment industry. Claudine Gay? Hamas? Cat Williams? This is what Jason Whitlock does. Throughout time, he has ascended as a provocateur, not a journalist, as an opinion writer and a provocateur, where he will insert himself into whatever the news is of the day and say, oh yeah, I can relate. Oh yeah, I need to tell you my opinion on this. And yet he bends the knee to the Glenn Becks and the Chris Rufos of the world. It's odd. If you also look at this piece that he wrote, he would say some other BS like, you have to not believe some of these things, that January 6th was insurrection and other falsehoods, and that Medicare should be affordable. It's insane. Insane. I will tell you this. There are some questions. Let's be real about it. There are some questions that one would have when you are seeing what Whitlock is saying. The problem is it's coming from this guy. It's coming from a dude who doesn't have a lick of credibility in the last 10 plus years. It comes from a dude who has gone from one conservative outlet to another conservative outlet to another conservative outlet because he cannot stick at any of these places. This is also a dude who has a clear vendetta against some people at ESPN. There are reasons to criticize ESPN, but what do we do it on? We do it on their words. What has been proven is this man continues to have a sour taste in his mouth because of the exit that he had at ESPN and how ashamed he felt and how he anointed himself the be-all, end-all printing out quotes of himself to hand out to coworkers, people under him. And yet he was let go from Black Grantland. What I will say also is this. He goes after Stephen A. lot. Look, we will too, when it is warranted. I don't hate the guy. I think a lot of the things he says are just wrong. But I don't attack him like this. And this feels personal with Whitlock. Maybe it's because Smith called him a fat bastard. Could be. I don't know. But one thing Whitlock says is, how did he rise to the top with limited journalistic integrity or something like that? He didn't rise to the top because of his journalism, dude. He rose to the top as an entertainer. Those are two very different things. Very different. Lastly, with all these questions coming about from Jason Whitlock, and whether they are fair or not fair, sure, I have some questions as well that I would love to ask Stephen A. And I would love to get to the bottom of some of these things. Maybe he's telling the truth, maybe he's not. I have no reason to doubt it, but what I will say is this. If you were to overhear a conversation, right? Because I think understanding people's motives, their history, and what they are saying on certain subjects from a morality-based standpoint, and whether some of the things they ascribe to are actually accurate or if they're just pandering, are very important. I think those are very important traits. If you were to, in Chicago, if you were on the L and you were hearing a top 5 list or even favorite hip-hop artist list, and that person that you're overhearing in a conversation names your favorite hip-hop artist, and you're processing it, you have a small little grin on your face, you're just looking down, maybe looking at your phone, and you look up and it's David Duke. Wouldn't you be like, is there something wrong with me? Why am I sharing things with this guy? It's important to just think about a little bit. And with Whitlock, he has a history of being off so many times. So his criticisms of Stephen A. just feel just that, incredibly off.